The mid-2000s really were a little golden age for gaming at large. 2006 alone saw the release of such classics like Half-Life 2 and The Elder Scrolls Oblivion. On the strategy gaming front, we got a game that was heralded on its release as one of the greatest real-time strategies ever made, Company of Heroes. A game which focuses heavily on the tactics and strategic elements of World War II, Company of Heroes had all manner of awards foisted upon it. But that was 15 years ago. With Company of Heroes 3 on the horizon, has the game that started it all held the line? Or is it starting to be pushed back into gaming irrelevancy? I'm Strat Tom, and this is the classic review of Company of Heroes. Company of Heroes is based on the Allied invasion of Normandy, which began with D-Day on June 6, 1944. Throughout the campaign, you play as various branches of the American Armed Forces, with most missions being based around the army, but there are some in which you control the newly founded airborne divisions. The scope of the campaign is either something to be commended or criticised depending on your disposition. The main campaign focuses purely on the Normandy invasion and not on the war as a whole. This means that we have a very in-depth campaign focusing right in on the early days of the American invasion. For history buffs out there, this could be a real treat, but if you were hoping to see the liberation of France, Operation Market Garden, the push into Germany, well, all of this is behind DLC paywalls. In this regard, Company of Heroes also falls into the frustratingly typical storytelling of the Second World War. Most media that looks at this time period, with a few exceptions, is always set after the American involvement in 1944. There were several countries, including the UK and Canada quite prominently, that were involved in the liberation of Western Europe. But their stories are rarely told. I don't mean to sound like a bitter Brit here, and I do appreciate that the Western Front could never have been successful without US involvement. But we've seen this 1,000 times now. That being said, the hyper-focused narrative of Company of Heroes does allow us to experience a number of key battles that are often overlooked in this period. If you've seen Band of Brothers, then you might know about Carentan. If not, then outside of Company of Heroes, I don't think I've ever seen it depicted with such detail. I once talked about the Total War games and how the level of detail and tactics in a battle situation ruined other strategy games for me. Company of Heroes is akin to the Total War games in that regard. It is the Modern Warfare equivalent. It's hard to play other games where units just move in range and fire at each other until a health bar runs down after playing Company of Heroes. In Company of Heroes, things like cover and protecting your flanks are vital. The bigger, later panzers are going to shrug off a shell if hit in their heavy front armour. You need to flank around and hit them in the weaker rear armour. Why is this not a thing in other games? Where your shot hits a tank should determine the damage done. Infantry too can use buildings and other environmental objects for cover. The level of cover they provide depends on their material. A hedgerow is a great place to hide the staging of an ambush, but it isn't going to stop bullets. A wooden wall may provide some protection, but it's quickly going to disintegrate under heavy fire. A wall made of stone or brick is excellent cover against bullets, but as soon as a tank rolls round, well, your infantry may need to move out of there pretty quickly. All in all, Company of Heroes just feels like a more visceral and real gaming experience. These soldiers aren't meant to feel like they're just programmed sprites on a screen. Sometimes they appear panicked, sometimes they miss their shots, and sometimes they've been outflanked and their position is no longer safe, and they run for it. Company of Heroes is one of the few games that has a unit cap, where I actually feel like it's warranted. Supplies are not plentiful in Company of Heroes, and replacing units is often difficult. This is compounded by the fact that the key point of the game is to take and hold strategic positions. If you lose key units, then it becomes difficult to hold the ground you've just taken. Company of Heroes often has a back and forth feel. The ebb and flow of attack, defend and counter-attack that I haven't really got from other games. Units feel valuable, particularly armour. Tanks can really change a battle, as an infantry division without adequate anti-tank weaponry can't really touch it. Bringing up armour feels important. Losing armour feels like a real loss. This is such an important aspect of strategy games. Losing men and resources should not inspire feelings of, oh well, try again next time. It should feel important, and it does here. I asked earlier if Company of Heroes had stood up in the face of its advanced age. Not only does it still stand up, but I can't think of another RTS game in the subsequent 15 years that has even come close to emulating this experience at this level. If there is criticism to be levelled, and it is mild criticism, then I guess that some of the campaign feels a little arcade-like. Company of Heroes includes different game styles in its skirmish and multiplayer modes, such as a domination mode, where you lose points when your enemy controls more key points than you. These game modes are all well and good in one-off matches, but in a campaign mode, I feel it undercuts the story of it a little. Am I nitpicking here? Absolutely. It is an all-round fantastic gameplay experience. If there is anywhere that Company of Heroes would show its age, then it would be in the presentation, right? My answer to that is, I guess so. Kinda. In between missions, there are usually some short cutscenes that set up the coming mission. These are not live action cutscenes like, say, Command & Conquer, and they just use the in-game graphics. The unit models, up close, do show their age, and in this instance you can tell the game is 15 years old. But they're still pretty good, though the dialogue is a bit clunky, and it's just the usual World War II soldier banter that you've heard in every World War II movie or game ever made. So yeah, they're not great, but I still commend Company of Heroes for including them anyway. If you've seen my Command & Conquer reviews, you know I love me a good cutscene. And really, that's about as far as my criticism of the game's presentation goes. The game still looks graphically good when in the top-down battlefield view. The way the environments will become visually damaged and scarred as battle rages on is fantastic. The use of sound design is great too, and the battles feel intense because of it. The gunfire and explosions are all superbly done. The fact that the game is 15 years old is not particularly showing all that badly. It looks good, it sounds good, and it feels good to play. There are many RTS games and many World War II games out there. In what may be a oversaturated market, particularly back in 2006, Company of Heroes proves that the cream does rise to the top. So, how to rate it? The premise, pros. A detailed, in-depth campaign. The cons. The level of detail sacrifices having a wider scope of the conflict. The gameplay, pros. An unparalleled level of tactical and strategic depth. The cons. Some of the campaign feels a little arcade-like. The presentation, pros. Excellent sound and graphic design. The cons. The cutscenes are a bit clunky and unoriginal. I'm looking over the pros and cons of this game, trying to decide what score to give. One thing that stands out to me is that all the pros are big, amazing things that make Company of Heroes stand tall in the RTS genre. The cons, on the other hand, are all just nitpicky. The game's flaws are tiny, mostly to the point of being insignificant. I've said before that a game doesn't need to be perfect to get a top score, just to be so good that its flaws are barely worth mentioning. The people who lauded it back in 2006 as one of the greatest strategy games of all time were not wrong. So, I've talked myself into it, and I'm giving Company of Heroes my second ever 10 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching. What did you think of Company of Heroes? Am I being overly generous here, or do you agree that it's one of the genre's best? Are you looking forward to Company of Heroes 3? Sound off in the comments below and tell me what should get the classic review treatment in future. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I'm Strat Tom, and I'll see you next time.